from snacks to chocolate candy, from salad to cheesecake, the delicious exotic tastes of California figs are featured in all of today's recipes. Shalom, and welcome to my kitchen. I'm Eenie Frost, and I must tell you how I became so involved in figs. We had a call from a man at the Western Research Kitchens in California, and he said, "You must cook with California figs." I said, "Oh, I don't know. They're so hard and firm, I don't think there would be enough taste." He said, "But wait, you haven't tasted our figs, and you see how very, very soft they are. In fact, they're so soft that I was even able to take a scissors or a knife and cut them very, very easily." So I said, "Well, I guess you're right then. We're going to have to experiment." But Devorah Heller walked in and started helping cook this morning, and she said, "What is this? Figs here, figs there, figs everywhere?" I said, "Wait, we are really going to make some exciting things." But the word fig, to me, brought out a biblical feeling. Why is it that when I think of figs, I look back and think this was something that was growing many, many millennia ago in Jerusalem? And so I went to my book and took a look. This book is called the Tanakh. Now, Tanakh is not exactly a name. What it is really is an abbreviation. The T stands for Torah, the 5 books of Moses. Then the second part is called Nevi'im, and the third part, Ketuvim. In other words, this book includes the 5 books of Moses, plus the prophets and the Psalms and all of the sayings. So here, from Micah, a very famous prophet, I must read this one to you because I think it's just beautiful. It says, "And they shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not take up war against nation, neither shall they know war any more. But every man shall sit under his fig tree." In other words, they did have figs in biblical days. And secondly, figs are a symbol of peace. They always have been. And I think that you will always hear that or see that in beautiful poetry that we see and read. And I said to him, "Well, what kind of recipes are we going to make?" And of course, when he said chocolate candy, I said, "Look, if we can make wonderful chocolate candy with figs, then I know we're going to make some interesting, exciting things." So we're going to start with this very interesting recipe for chocolate fig candy. And we begin by melting 1/4 cup of butter in a pan. And here I have 1/2 cup of cocoa that we're going to add to it. Blend it through a little bit. This will have to set for just a little while until it gets smooth. And here, to make it really good, how about 1/4 cup of honey? So you can see that this is going to give it a delicious candy feeling. Now you have to let this cook just for a little while until it gets smooth and softens up. And in a bowl, we're going to mix 1 cup of nuts. Is this getting better already? And, oh, I know Jackson will like this, 1/2 cup of coconut. Are you into that one? And here we have the figs, and I told you how easily they cut up. It was just absolutely no problem to cut these up at all. So here we have a cup of the chopped up figs. And we'll mix this up and pour the chocolate over it when it gets firm. But it isn't quite firm enough. So what I'm going to do is show you what it looks like. here is actually, oh, and we should add a little lemon juice to this because this will soften the figs a little bit before we put the chocolate in it. So this is what the consistency really looks like. And if you take your tablespoon and just put it in, oh, it smells so good. I'm sorry we don't have smell-o-vision because you would really love this. And then either put it on a wax paper, or if you want to put it right into the papers, you can do that. But they really firm up nicely. Look at this. This is going to set in just the shape that you want. And put them on a nice piece of wax paper, let them set overnight, and you'll see they will really be delicious, and they will look something like this when you get done. If you want to put a little powdered sugar on it, you can do that. Otherwise, they are fine, just plain. I put a little powdered sugar on a couple of them, but it isn't really necessary. Now, the next thing that we're going to make, and I call this one a fig nut snack. And this is really interesting because this time we're going to use the black figs. They call them the black mission figs. I'm sure you've seen them. And they, again, are very soft. I thought they were going to be hard, but they're very soft. And to even soften them up more, I marinated them for 2 days. And here's what you use. Either you can use all orange juice, or if you want to use brandy, it's fine. I was afraid that too much brandy was going to be a little too much for me. So what I did was mix it. I've got about 3/4 of a cup of orange juice and the rest brandy. And they are sitting in here for 2 days. And now when I took them out, I'm going to make a little indentation. Just take your spoon and make a little indentation in it. And we're going to make a delicious filling with an 8-ounce cream cheese. Oh, we better soften this up with a little milk. Here's 1/4 of a cup of milk to soften this up a little bit. And then I have a little vanilla. But oh, the best part about this is I'm going to add 1/4 of a cup of crystallized ginger. Oh, is that wonderful? You know, I think that goes back to the old ginger candy that we used to make, right? And it really is a wonderful flavor. Now take your spoon, take a little teaspoon. I think that's the best thing to work with. And just fill the little indentations that you've made in your figs. And you'll see that this is so soft that they will go right in. There won't be any problem in making a little indentation in it. And after you put your filling in them, look at how nice this looks. Already you've got the black and white look so that it's going to look pretty on your table, and that's what you want to do. You want to have a nice table with all fresh is best, of course, but you want it to have a nice look. And then we're going to top it with a pecan. So look at how pretty that's going to look. And here we have a plate that's all ready. And I think you can see how really very simple it is. And I hope that you'll try them.
For a copy of Enie's recipes, send a self-addressed stamped envelope to Enie's Kitchen in care of WJUF, 1 South Franklin Street, Chicago, Illinois, 60606. That's Enie's Kitchen, WJUF, 1 South Franklin Street, Chicago, Illinois, 60606. Please include the show number with your recipe request.
When I think about fresh fruits and the trees, I always think of a special holiday. Jewish holidays are generally centered around either morality, concepts, or, of course, many times there are people who are involved. Let's say Moses is involved in Passover, but actually the theme of Passover is slavery to freedom. Or Hanukkah is tied up with the Maccabee brothers. But at the same time, it's truly the rededication of the temple and the rededication of our own selves. And so there are holidays that are set with the seasons, which is very interesting. And this holiday that I'm going to tell you about, the name of it is the date on which it is observed. It's called Tu B'Shvat. Now, the Hebrew calendar, which is based on a lunar solar calendar, has its own months. And the name of one of the months is Shvat. And when you put a be before it, if I said be him, be her, it would mean of him, of her. So B'Shvat means of Shvat. Tu, how do we get the word tu? In Hebrew, each letter has a numerical value. And so the numerical value of ta is 9 and vav is 6. So 9 and 6 is 15. So Tu B'Shvat happens on the 15th of Shvat. But where is this? Where is this at the new year of the trees and the tithing of the fruits takes place? Was it in Chicago or Miami or Paris? No. Hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago, our people have had a love affair with Jerusalem for a very long time, not just since the advent of Israel. And so this was millennia ago when the Torah was written and when the holidays were set, that Tu B'Shvat is set in Jerusalem. And so it has become a custom for us to call it the Arbor Day, or the New Year of the trees, the time when the trees are beginning to bloom. And we have a custom in America where we plant a tree in Jerusalem. The children always bring money and plant a tree. And so this has become something very popular. In fact, there is an organization called the Jewish National Fund, which has been in, maybe since the turn of the century. And they're interested in the reclamation of the land, because how is a better way to reclaim the land than by planting it? They have forests. Well, forests. You know, how old is Israel altogether? It's not bigger than New Jersey. But they have a forest for Artur Rubinstein that's in the shape of a piano. Would you believe that? And I wanted to show you just something in particular. This is a contribution that was given to the Children's Forest. It was sent to us in honor of the birth of a grandchild. Somebody planted 2 trees. Or this one was a contribution given to plant 2 trees in another forest in Israel. So these are the beautiful things that we do. And of course, we always eat fresh fruits and fresh nuts on this day. And I thought it would be very appropriate to make just a nice big salad. So let's take some green lettuce and some radicchio, and then perhaps set on it some pears. You know, pears are very popular there. In fact, when our daughter was in Israel, she worked in a kibbutz where they raised pears. And she said she didn't think she ever wanted to look at another pear after working on them every day for all those months. And then to give it a little color, how about in between some tangerines? You know, tangerines and oranges when you're talking about Israel. I'm sure whenever you go to the supermarket, you always look for the ones that come from there. And then in the middle, of course, the dates. The date palms that you see there are so wonderful. So we'll put our dates in the middle, and then around the sides, we'll use our figs. And what we're going to do is we'll try the black mission and the regular calamurna, and just kind of divide them, put them around, and see how pretty that looks. Now we're going to make a nice dressing to put on this wonderful salad. And I think this is a very interesting dressing. It's going to have an oil and vinegar base, but the vinegar is going to be a red wine vinegar. We have 2 tablespoons of red wine vinegar, and we're going to add to that half a cup of oil. But I want to tell you that if you want to use half olive oil and half regular salad oil, that's fine. So this is 1/3 of a cup of regular oil and 1/3 of a cup of olive oil, but you can divide it whichever way you like. And now to give it a nice taste, what's better than 2 tablespoons of wonderful Dijon mustard? And I like the coarse pepper, don't you? It really gives it a nice flavor. And salt, and a tablespoon of lemon juice. And we will take this, mix it together, and pour it over our wonderful salad. Oh, and here's a drop of sugar, just a pinch. I think that gives it just that little extra tang, especially when you're going to use it on a fruit salad. So just pour some of this wonderful dressing over your salad. And I thought, what would be appropriate to go with a salad? Well, I know this is going to sound pretty wild to you, but I was thinking about what this man had told me, and he said, you can really cook with figs all the time. I said, all the time? For instance, what else could we do? Now we've made all the candy, and we have our wonderful fruit salad. Now what can we do? What about pancakes? Would you believe fig pancakes? And they are delicious. You can come over and ask any of my neighbors. They all had an opportunity to try them. And to make the fig pancakes, we're going to start out with a very basic kind of a dough. Here I have 2 egg yolks, and I'm going to add to that 1/4 of a cup of water. Here we have 1/4 of a cup of water, and of course this is going to need a little seasoning. So we're going to add a teaspoon of salt and about 1/8 of a cup, just 2 tablespoons of sugar to give it a little feeling. And what do I have here? One of my absolutely favorites, cottage cheese. And when you mix it in things like this, it really is delicious. Have you ever used cottage cheese in cooking? Marvelous. So I have 2 cups of cottage cheese. And I think this is really a very nice thing to work with because it gives it a nice consistency, and instead of milk, it has like a texture that you want to use with it. And of course, in order to thicken this up, we're going to have to use some flour. So I'm going to take about 3/4 of a cup of flour, will be just about right to the 2 egg base that we're using. So let's add our flour in. And you see, this is just about thickening it enough. You have to watch this. And here come our wonderful figs. And you know what else? You can even do these in the food processor. If they start to stick, just put a little sugar or flour on it, just a little bit, and you'll see that you won't have any problem in the food processor. They'll go right through it. And they're so healthy. They're really wonderful to use. Now look at this nice consistency that we have. So we will take them by the tablespoon. Of course, my tablespoons are always worked out by some kind of a wooden spoon, you know that. And I have put a little oil in here to heat up. And we'll set these in, these wonderful pancakes. And the color is even interesting because here you're getting that figgy color that's even going to set into it. Although when I first took them out, they said, apple pancakes. I said, no, 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 these are not apple pancakes. You have to give it a try because the figs have a little different flavor. And I think that you'll find that when you use them. You're a little bit surprised because you're used to those thick, heavy figs that we usually eat. And this is different. Because they're so soft, they even give more flavor. And I have to tell you something else about the figs that I thought was very interesting that he said. They're very high in calcium. They're very high in potassium, even more so than bananas, because we always think bananas are #1. And they're very high in fiber. And you're going to see them advertised much more lately because we're getting so much into fiber in our diets, how important it is. And when you see that figs contain all of these 3 basic elements, you're going to wonder why I haven't used them before. Now you see they're beginning to turn brown, and when the bubbles come on the side, then it's the time to turn it. And add to it, I know that you're hesitant about using a lot of eggs, but egg whites are fine. Here's 2 egg whites that we're going to add right into our dough, to our batter. It's going to give it a very nice fluffy feeling. And we can add these right into our pan. I just have a little oil. I think that's the best thing to use when you're cooking this kind of a pancake because you see the cottage cheese is giving this another consistency already. And when they're finished, they're going to look like this. And look at how delicious they are. I know you're going to want to try some of these because we've tried them and they're really delicious.
For a copy of Enie's recipes, send a self-addressed stamped envelope to Enie's Kitchen in care of WJUF, 1 South Franklin Street, Chicago, Illinois, 60606. That's Enie's Kitchen, WJUF, 1 South Franklin Street, Chicago, Illinois 60606. Please include the show number with your recipe request.
Now, what would be a sensational dessert to have with figs? Well, I was looking through Mother Wonderful's cheesecake book, and I came across this marvelous cake that I thought was absolutely perfect. Because not only does it have figs in it, but it really has an Israeli flavor because it has orange juice and lemon juice and all of the wonderful things that you find when you're over there. And so when we talk about fresh fruits and vegetables and figs and Tu B'Shvat, all of these things really come together in it. And of course, when you make cheesecake, I'm not going to tell you that it's that simple. I always tell you if I'm making a simple dessert. This is not that simple. It takes a little while, so you have to figure you have a couple of hours. The children are in school or you have a little time at night to sit down and concentrate on it. Because there are 3 basic parts to making cheesecake. Each one is easy, but it does take a little while. Now for a base, I used a cookie crumb today instead. And here's what you do to make this crust. And you can put it in your food processor if you like. I have 2 cups of vanilla wafers, and you can just chop those very easily in your food processor and add 1/4 of a cup of sugar and then melt 1/4 of a cup of butter and just pour that right into it. And that will give you enough of a crust to go across the entire bottom and the sides of a 10-inch springform. And you really don't even have to grease this. Just put it in and you'll see it'll work fine because it'll stick to the sides, and that's what you want it to do, because after this is done, you're going to release this and take it off, and you don't want it sticking, so don't grease the sides. There'll be enough grease from the butter that you have from the vanilla wafers that will go right into it, so you needn't be concerned. Now for the cake, you really, really need a mix master, because when you're talking about 4 8-ounce packages of cream cheese, that is quite a bit. And so I think in that case, you really have to take the big mix master to do it. And it'll take a little bit to cream it down, but of course when you do that, always add sugar with it, because it's better to cream whatever you're doing, the butter or the cream cheese, with the sugar. So I'm going to add a cup of sugar to the cream cheese. And take your spatula, because that's what will help cream it down, bring it together. Now you see that this is still pretty thick, so it's going to need a little liquid. And what we're going to add are these wonderful ingredients. First I have 2 teaspoons of orange juice. And we had some wonderful oranges, so we were standing there squeezing them and said, oh, this is really the best, because it gives you the best flavor. And please, I hope you're using real lemons, because that only takes a moment to squeeze it. So here we have 2 teaspoons of orange juice, 1 teaspoon of lemon juice. Now then, we're even going to add a little sweetness to this whole thing. And of course in Israel, and I think Mother Wonderful was right, to add 1/4 of a cup of honey. Look at what a good flavor this is going to give it. Add it right in and it'll blend in. And to that, we're also going to take 4 eggs and a little pinch of salt. This, of course, is optional. I know that many of us are holding back on salt, but a little bit of salt, just a little pinch into your cake, into something that's going to be baked, is really going to add a little spark of flavor in it. I think you'll see that. Now, our eggs, of course, we're going to check them first, because we always check to see that they're acceptable for kashrut, if there isn't any blood in it. And always add 1 egg at a time. And let that get blended in. Watch your eggs carefully to see that that's blended in before you add the next one. Crack them in a little dish. Don't crack them in the bowl, because you know that's only going to be a disaster if something is wrong with your egg. So be sure you do it in a side dish. Here we have it coming up. And here's the third egg. And already this is getting more creamy. Can you see this consistency? Just those couple of eggs and the juice that we've added is already making this much more creamy. But you have to watch the sides of it, because when you're working with this much cream cheese, you can end up with lumps. You want to be sure that this is very creamy. And we're going to add our fourth egg and blend that one in, because you must be sure that this is all blended in to be right. And while you're doing this, be sure that you have your oven preheated to 350. And this takes a long time to cook and no peeking. You know, my husband is terrible. The first thing he comes in, he starts opening the oven to see what's in there. And I said, no, let's not do that. So we're going to add